Okay, let's talk about China. We all know the story, right? This incredible economic rise over the last, what, 4 decades?
It's been absolutely staggering, yeah.
Yeah.
A total transformation.
Going from, one of the world's poorest countries to challenging the U.S., it's really been an economic miracle. Reshaped everything.
Lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty.
Yeah.
Changed global trade completely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit worrying too. There's this strange, quiet problem that's kind of bubbling up. And it really threatens to unwind a lot of that progress. Think about this. A whole country where people are saving tons of money, not because they want to stockpile cash, but because they feel like they have to, like there's no other choice.
That's the crux of it.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to get into today. Why is China stuck in this spending crisis? And what does it actually mean for them and, for the rest of us?
Right.
And hey, if you want to stay ahead of the curve on these big global shifts, make sure you subscribe to Geopolitics Gazette. It's the smart way to stay informed.
It's fascinating because to really get what's happening now, you actually have to look back. Way back.
Through the foundation?
Exactly. This isn't something that just popped up overnight.
Yeah.
China's economy, its whole model, it wasn't built for, comfortable consumer living.
Okay.
It was built for one single purpose.
Yeah.
Catch up. Pure and simple.
Right. Industrialize at all costs.
Precisely. Think back to the 1980s. After decades of, chaos and isolation, their GDP per capita was tiny, less than $200.
Wow.
So when Deng Xiaoping started the market reforms in '78, the goal was survival. It was about building industry, not buying stuff.
Consumerism.
Not at all. Every yuan, every bit of capital went into factories, roads, bridges, and, crucially, saving. Saving for the future was baked in from the start.
So that saving mentality, that history, how does that actually play out today in people's behavior, especially compared to, say, the U.S. or Europe?
Oh, the difference is just huge.
Yeah.
Astounding, really. In America, what does the average person save? Maybe 5% of their income?
Something like that, yeah.
In China, it's now hitting over 40%.
40. 8 times higher.
8 times. And for decades, this enormous pool of savings wasn't just sitting under mattresses. It was the engine.
The fuel for growth.
Exactly, the fuel. It flowed right through the banks, into loans for more factories, funding massive infrastructure projects, mortgages, the works.
So savings basically equaled investment.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
By 2010, investment in physical stuff buildings, machines, infrastructure, that accounted for almost half of China's GDP growth.
Half. That's incredible.
It is. And look, it worked wonders in many ways. It pulled over 800 million people out of poverty in just 30 years. That's nearly 15% of everyone on Earth.
Unbelievable numbers.
Cities just exploded. Villages turned into factory towns into these sprawling megacities. But
there's always a but.
There's always a but. This investment-heavy model, it built an industrial giant, sure, but it never really built a strong, consumer economy alongside it.
So an imbalance from the start.
A fundamental imbalance.
Yeah.
And that's what's coming back to bite them now.
Okay, so if savings fueled investment, and investment was nearly half of GDP growth, where did most of that investment actually go? What did it physically build?
Well, that takes us straight to the king of the boom. Construction. Real estate.
The building frenzy.
Yeah, absolutely. By 2010, construction alone was driving almost half of the GDP growth. The housing market was just on fire, prices climbing over 15% every single year.
15% a year? Sounds unsustainable.
It felt unstoppable, though, like this perfect cycle. Developers borrowed huge sums. Banks loved it. It stimulated lending. Local governments got rich selling land. And it created millions upon millions of jobs.
Kept the money moving.
Exactly. This constant building kept cash flowing through the whole system, even though people weren't actually spending that much on everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody really paused to ask, hey, what happens if this property market, stops?
Or worse, crashes. Which, as we know, it eventually did. You
Yeah.
can't build forever, right? So what was the first real sign of trouble? The first big crack?
The big one, the one everyone noticed, was Evergrande, 2021.
Right, the huge developer.
A giant, drowning in over $300 billion of debt. When it started to collapse, the shockwaves were instant.
What did that look like on the ground?
Tens of thousands of families suddenly stuck with half-finished apartments they'd paid for. Construction projects just froze solid across the country. And critically, property prices started to fall. That one asset the Chinese middle class thought was absolutely rock solid, their main source of wealth, their homes, suddenly felt like a risk. a liability even.
That must have shattered confidence.
Completely shattered it. The belief that property only ever goes up, gone overnight.
So the property market stumbles. Confidence takes a massive hit. Usually in a crisis like that, you need people to spend, right? Consumer demand becomes the lifeline.
It's essential. When businesses pull back and investment slows, it's ordinary people buying things that keeps the economy afloat.
And the government tried to get things going again.
Oh, they rushed in, cut interest rates, offered tax breaks, leaned heavily on banks to lend more money.
Right.
The usual playbook.
Did it work?
Nope. None of it really moved the needle. In fact, household savings went up, hit a record high over $20 trillion.
$20 trillion, just sitting there.
More than the entire GDP of the European Union, just parked, not being spent.
Wow. Just let that sink in. And now, almost 5 years later,
Growth rates are still way down, some of the lowest they've seen since the 1980s, before the boom really took off.
which brings us back to the core question. Why? Why aren't people spending, even with government nudges? What's the real hesitation here?
This is where it gets, well, less about pure economics and more about society, about demographics.
Okay.
The real underlying issue, the quiet killer, is demographics. China has collapsing birth rates and a population that's aging incredibly fast.
Faster than expected.
Much faster. By 2040, projections show over a quarter, 25% of China's population will be over 60 years old.
And older people spend less.
Generally, yes. Older populations tend to save more, spend less, especially on big-ticket items. Plus, you have younger families now saving frantically to care for their aging parents and the elderly themselves. They're holding on to cash for retirement and potential health care costs.
Because the state support isn't really there.
Exactly. That's the other huge piece. It's not just the numbers, it's the lack of a safety net.
But isn't China officially, socialist? Wouldn't that mean strong welfare?
You'd think so, but the reality is China's welfare state is surprisingly weak. Health insurance is patchy and often inadequate. Public pensions are pretty modest. There isn't that bedrock of support that gives people the confidence to spend freely.
So it's kind of ironic. A socialist state forces extreme individual financial responsibility.
It's a deep irony. People are forced to save out of, well, fear and uncertainty, not because they're planning for luxuries. And this burden falls heavily on the young.
The one-child policy effect lingering.
Absolutely. You have young couples potentially responsible for supporting 2 sets of parents, maybe even 4 grandparents. 6 elders for 1 working couple.
That's immense pressure.
It's crushing for many. And some are just deciding. It's too much. They're opting out. This has led to this phenomenon called tangping.
Lying flat. I've heard about that.
Yeah. It's not just about being unemployed, though. Youth unemployment did spike above 21% before they stopped publishing the data in 2023.
Convenient.
But lying flat is more like a quiet cultural rebellion. Young people are disillusioned. The promise of endless upward mobility feels broken. So they're stepping off the hamster wheel, refusing the high-pressure 996 work culture, the relentless drive to consume.
They see the ladder's broken, basically.
Or that the climb isn't worth the cost, especially when you factor in caring for elders and the weak safety net. It feels like a broken contract for a whole generation.
Okay, so weak safety nets, aging population, disillusioned youth. This all sounds like it feeds into a negative loop.
A classic vicious cycle. Experts are now forecasting that long-term household consumption growth, people buying stuff, is likely to slow down to maybe 3–4% a year.
It's that bad.
For an economy needing to transition away from investment, it's really bad.
Yeah.
That level of consumption might only add about 1.5% to overall GDP growth each year. That's nowhere near enough to power a modern economy, especially one China's size.
And the knock-on effects.
If people aren't buying, companies stop investing in new products or factories. They stop hiring. Unemployment creeps up, which makes more people scared to spend.
The deflationary spiral.
Exactly what economists worry about. Falling prices sound good, maybe, but they're usually a sign of really weak demand. Consumers are holding back because they're worried about the future.
And that makes everything worse?
Much worse. Falling prices make existing debts harder to pay back in real terms. It crushes company profits. It leads to more job losses, less spending. The spiral goes downwards. It doesn't explode like a financial crisis. It just slowly sinks. Very dangerous.
Normally, this is where the government steps in big time, right? Fiscal policy, spending money on big projects, maybe stimulus checks, creating jobs.
That's the standard toolkit, yes. Inject money to break the cycle.
But you're saying China can't really do that?
Well, here's the kicker. They don't have as much room to maneuver as you might think. They're running out of what's called fiscal headroom.
Meaning they're already deep in debt.
Effectively, yes. After decades of relentless building, borrowing huge sums for infrastructure, and bailing out troubled companies or banks, the government's own finances are strained.
How strained.
The official budget deficit hit a record in 2023, over 4% of GDP. Now, lots of countries run deficits, but for China, which historically tried to be quite fiscally conservative, that's a sign of pressure.
And that's just the official number.
That's just the central government. The bigger problem might be the local governments. They're deeply indebted.
From the construction boom.
A lot of it, yes. They relied heavily on selling land to developers to fund their budgets. But now, with the property slump, that revenue stream is drying up fast.
So they're squeezed.
Very squeezed. In 2024, Beijing had to raise the debt ceiling for local governments by a massive 6 trillion yuan, that's about $600 billion, just to keep things afloat.
Wow. And if local governments are broke...
That means less money for schools, hospitals, roads, less investment, and critically, less ability to provide the very welfare support that might actually encourage people to start spending again. It ties their hands.
This really paints a picture of an internal struggle. But China isn't an island. What does this internal freeze mean for the rest of the world?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? China's problem inevitably becomes everyone's problem.
Because it's just so big.
It's huge. The second largest economy on the planet, the workshop of the world. Nearly 30% of all global manufacturing happens in China.
30%.
They're the biggest buyer of basic raw materials, iron ore, copper, coal, you name it. And they're the biggest exporter of finished goods, electronics, machines, clothes, toys, everything.
So when that engine starts sputtering...
The whole global system feels it instantly.
And we're not just talking hypothetically, right? We're actually seeing these effects now.
Oh, absolutely. Global supply chains are already feeling the pinch. Fewer factories operating at full tilt in China means delays and shortages for manufacturers everywhere.
Like car parts for Germany?
Exactly. Or components for electronics being assembled in places like Vietnam or Mexico. It rivels outwards.
And it's not just cheap stuff, is it? It affects high-tech, too.
Critically so. Think about rare earth metals.
Essential for modern tech.
Essential for EVs, smartphones, wind turbines, advanced semiconductors, even sophisticated military gear. China controls something like 70% of the global exports of these crucial materials.
70% dominance.
So if their production slows down, or even just becomes less reliable because of internal economic problems, it's not just about prices going up. It could actually bottleneck the production of the very technologies the rest of the world is pinning its future on.
It could choke off innovation elsewhere.
It absolutely could. In our interconnected global economy, a significant slowdown in China acts like a major drag on growth for pretty much everyone. It becomes a serious headwind.
Before we wrap up, just a quick reminder. If you value this kind of analysis and want to stay informed on the forces shaping global politics and economics, do subscribe to Geopolitics Gazette. It really helps us keep bringing you these conversations.
Definitely worth it.
So, putting it all together then, where does this leave China? It feels like a real turning point.
It absolutely is. A crossroads. For decades, you had this unstoppable economic engine, lifting millions from poverty, building cities out of farmland, becoming the world's factory. An incredible story.
But the model itself is now the problem.
Exactly. That same model, built on massive investment, forced savings, and endless construction, it's now cracking under its own weight. People aren't spending. Companies are hesitant to hire or invest, and the youth are, well, checking out in some ways.
And underlying it all, you said, is trust.
I think that's the core of it. It's not just an economic spreadsheet problem. It's about trust. Trust in having a stable job. Trust in the property market. Trust that the government will provide a safety net if things go wrong. Trust in the future itself. And right now, for many in China, that trust feels broken.
So what's the choice for the government, for the CCP?
They face a monumental decision, really. Option 1, try to rebuild that trust. That likely means creating real social safety nets, better health care, pensions. It probably means loosening some of the tight state control over the economy, maybe shifting more economic power towards households, towards consumers. Let people feel secure enough to spend.
And option 2?
Option 2 is basically double down. Keep propping up the old system. More state-directed investment, perhaps focusing on high-tech instead of property. Maintain tight control. Try to manage the decline of the old model while hoping a new one emerges. It might look strong from the outside, but it risks the whole thing slowly sinking from within due to that lack of domestic demand and trust.
A tough choice with huge consequences either way.
Immense consequences. And here's a final thought for you, for everyone listening. An economy as gigantic as China's doesn't actually need to have a dramatic crash like 2008 to cause a global crisis.
It just needs to slow down.
It just needs to stop growing significantly. Stagnation in China, given its role, would be a massive shock to the global system. And the worrying thing is, that's kind of what's starting to happen right now.
A sobering thought indeed. Well, thank you for breaking that down for us. Hopefully this gives everyone a much clearer picture of the really complex situation unfolding there.
My pleasure. It's a crucial issue to understand.
Absolutely. We'll be back soon with another look at the forces shaping our world. Before you head off, please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for Geopolitics Gazette. Your support is what makes this possible. Thanks for tuning in.